34 additional enumerators were deployed for institutional enumeration. When we say institutional enumeration, we're talking about prison compound, boarding school, military barracks, police barracks. So there was a special team that had that responsibility to enumerate those institutions, including special population, disadvantaged youth. 2,727 supervisors were deployed, 160 district census officers, and 15 county census directors spearheaded the field work of the census. So we targeted 5.4 million people. We're able to reach 5.2 million people, and this confirmed to all of the projections we see across. The Population Reference Bureau, which is a renowned source, projected Liberia population to be 5.3 million. The World Population Dashboard that is provided by UNFPA globally estimated Liberia population to be 5.3 million, and Microtrends also estimated our population to be 5.3 million in 2022. So these are our population numbers. Moserado accounts for the highest proportion of our population, almost 2 million people, followed by Nima County. Nima and Moserado constitute almost 48% of our total population. Nima is followed by Bon County. Bon County is followed by Lofa, Margibi, Grand Bassa, Grand Gila. The lowest is River Says, and then Bapolo. So this is a pattern. If you have seen the 2008 census, it follows similar pattern. The only change we have is River Says coming last instead of Grand Cru. That's the only change in position. But all of the other counties follow similar pattern. Next. For our population growth rate, our current population inter-census growth rate is 3. Bapolo has the lowest growth rate. River G, Grand Cru has the highest, and Moserado is at 3.4. Next. So the inter-census growth rate is similar to other countries. If you look at Ghana, Ghana is 2.1, Guinea is 2.4, Cote d'Ivoire 2.5, Tanzania 3, Liberia 3, Mali 2.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be talking tough on U.S.-Liberia relations under President Weah. What is it like? And the 2022 Housing and Population Census. That's what we're going to be talking tough on tonight. With me to do this, I have Dr. Abdullah Dukle, who is joining us. Dr. Duke, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We have our governance consultant, Mr. Admeke Salif. Mr. Salif, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Let's do it. Thank you, Dennis.
Joining us for the first time is Mr. Thomas B. Kana. Mr. Kana is a graduate student at the renowned Duke University, studying public policy. Mr. Kana, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. It's actually Masters in International Development Policy.
Exactly, International Development Policy. I knew some policy was there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me welcome Mr. Kalabo Gonglo. He's the founder of the African Map Genus Project. He's the statistician. He's the one who is very keen to numbers. Mr. Gonglo, welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I want to welcome Mr. Laramai Yonton here. Mr. Yonton is joining us from Philadelphia. Mr. Yonton is a business owner and also a GMB guy. Mr. Yonton, welcome.
Thank you, Dennis. It's good to be here. And want to say hi to all of our panelists as well.
Last but definitely not the least is our friend from Waplo Institute, all the way from behind God's back in River G County. This is FOL political analyst, Mr. Mohammed Sharif. Mr. Sharif, welcome. Been a while. Muted, please unmute.
Yeah, so it's certainly been a while, and I'm very delighted to be back. In some way, shape, or form. I am very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. This is Tough Talking Thursday, and we are here and we broadcasting here. We want to welcome all our viewers, even those who are going to watch later. Gentlemen, if you are here and you are watching concerned that why so many guys, sorry, we don't have a lady tonight, but we are still trying every time to get the female representation, but it's a work in progress. Gentlemen, we all woke up to the news today of the tragic event that happened, the tragedy that happened at the home of former Chief Justice Gloria Musu Sky. And armed robbery went on, and the daughter of the former Chief Justice was killed, and also others wounded and at the hospital in critical condition. This is very sad. Dr. Duke, you spent a long time in Monrovia there.
Yeah.
People always say this thing never happened Ellen time. But I mean, this is a tragedy, and I don't know what else to say. We always hear about other kind of violence. This is a big woman, right? So we're hearing it, but I mean, what about other areas that this is have happened? We always hear about the people they call Zogos coming in, or rampage, and all this kind of thing happening in Monrovia. What's your reaction to this tragedy?
Well, I think it's a very sad development, and it should worry everyone, not only the general public, but also the government, because people can do this and kill somebody in the process. Just walk away. I think it can happen to anyone. Either you're in the government or not. It means that there are people who don't care about how they do it, but they will do it, and that this is a very dangerous precedent. And walking into the campaign process, it sends a wrong signal. This is not the kind of thing kind of news we want to hear. Definitely not. And we all have to pray for her.
Yeah, definitely, Mr. Yonton. This news shocked everybody, and my thing is probably happening in other parts of, especially the capital.
This is not. I mean, first of all, we send our hearts to the former Chief Justice and her family. It is a sad thing, but we continuously see on the We Are government how our people are less secure, how the government lacks the capacity to provide security for all of its people, and not just people who are top brass. I listened to a startling revelation from the former head of the TRC, who pointed this incident to be allegedly associated, with the workings and doings of Jefferson Koji. He stated clearly on one of the platforms that he's willing to go to court. He named the deputy operations, the security operations at the Monrovia, at the MCC as being the mastermind, as being the one used by Koji to carry out this act. I think we need to go beyond just police investigation. We need to demand that the police, in this particular instant, conduct a speeded investigation. I think the move of the Liberian Senate today was in the right direction. I hope that the Senate can expand on just not passing a law that protects or that guarantee members of the government, officials of the government to carry arms, but for each citizen to have that right under the law to carry arms and protect themselves. So we're moving from a nation where the president wants us to buy CCTV to protect ourselves to a nation where each citizen has to protect himself, if need be, by carrying a fire weapon. And this is something that we should all advocate for, because Liberia is not secure.
You mean for each citizen to carry a firearm?
Citizen has the purchasing power to purchase weapon must do to protect themselves, because the government has lacked and failed in its capacity to protect the citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Salif, what's your reaction to this tragic news?
Well, I think it's just a deterioration or continued deterioration here of security. It's not, like you said, this is not the first time. Uh, this is it's come on everybody's radar because it's the former Chief Justice, and my understanding is there was a first attempt, and that was reported to police, and they would deploy her residence, and she has some private security, and now this led to a loss of life and injuries. And the former Chief Justice herself had to, I've read different accounts on social media, I had to flee the scene. We saw former peace ambassador, Mr. Richard Talbot Jr., the third, was murdered in his apartment. We saw there was that very Broadville, there was a lady, I forgot her name, she was in government somewhere. Somebody broke in her home. They usually use armed robbery as a sort of ploy to say, oh, armed robbers burglarized somebody's home and in the process killed someone or hurt someone. This one, the way it's been described, it sounded like some kind of assassination attempt. And the former government official who was murdered, home in Broadview, I forgot her name. I think it was also alleged that was an assassination. So was the one who, Mr. Talbot III. And of course, the countless of citizens who have, suffered similar fate. So while we send our hearts and thoughts and prayers and best wishes to the former Chief Justice and her family, we think that this is a national concern. I mean, look at the Senate. You're talking about the Senate. They just care about themselves. The first thing they were thinking about, how can we pass the legislation to protect ourselves? I think that's ridiculous. You are the representatives of the people. You should be there to look out for the citizens and look out for the whole nation. So I think the government in all branches have really failed the Liberian people.
Thomas, you can admit, okay.
Thank you, Dennis. I think like everyone, the first thing to do is to send our best wishes to the former Chief Justice. I did watch a video when Councillor Gwangolo went to visit her, and when you listen to her speaking, you can really know that she's shocked. And the question she kept asking was, what have I done that people would come after me this way? So I think the only thing we can do is to be able to pray for her, to pray for the family so that she can gradually overcome this. But as someone myself who's going to school, I think the saddest part of this whole tragedy is the girl that lost her life. I understand she has just brought her grade sheet and clearance from STARS Institute. You know how important information technology is, how excited people are when they graduate from STARS and other universities that are doing IT in Liberia. And she was just waiting for graduation and she lost her life. I know we all on the platform have gone to school, we've graduated. You know how that excitement can be when you clear up and you're about to graduate. You want to celebrate with the family. I understand she was the first person to get to a university level in the family. And for her to have lost her life when she was perhaps not the main target is really sad. And like everyone has said, I think this is just another incident to show how security has deteriorated in the country. And I think this needs to claim the attention of all stakeholders to be able to see what can be done.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif, there's always a tendency to politicize this, and then sometimes it kind of becloud the investigation. Sometimes people say, well, it's the government, and then government will sit back. What is your, on that front, when it comes to the politics of this, or people will say, well, this never happened before, and someone will say, oh no, what's about this other person who was killed during Ellen Salif? And it go on and on and on and on. How do we really have an honest conversation about things like this without the normal polarizing politics?
Listen, so our hearts go out to the former Chief Justice of the Republic of Liberia. Look, we can do both. We can politicize. We can express our divergent opinion, and at the same time hold this government's feet to the fire, hold this government accountable. This government has failed to protect the Liberian people. Period. So you talking about a brazen attack on, you just said, a big person. And what you mean by that is this: these are the who's who in the Liberian nation state. When you talk about former Chief Justice Gloria Musu Scott, others have talked about recent attacks on other citizens. Tolbert, the Tolbert family, the son of the late President Tolbert, the son of the late President Tupman. These are the who's who, the big wigs, so to speak. But there have also been individuals whose names that we're not even going to remember on this platform, that have been murdered in broad daylight, and the government has failed. So now we have a government of the Republic of Liberia that has failed, absolutely doing nothing. You have a president who's going all over the place, who's patrolling, who's just in flight, and he's not governing. So he's sleeping at the wheels of governance, and this is deplorable. So right now it is very, very difficult to be a Liberian, especially a Liberian living in the Republic of Liberia. It is a very trying time. So we've gone from, regardless of what you say about the post-war years of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, but you can then argue now that we've taken 100 step backwards. And this is not a hyperbole. Because George, listen, Dennis, all of the people that we know, that we've talked about, some of whom we've talked about on this platform, with the quasi investigation, what has become of those investigations? Is anyone behind bars now? Have you heard of anyone who was a prosecutor and has gone to jail for life? Have you heard of anyone who was perhaps I think Liberia still has the death penalty, who was executed for the murder of X, Y, and Z? You're not going to see that, because the government is not serious about protecting the lives and property of the Liberian people. And so a government that has failed to protect the lives of the Liberian people does not deserve to rule, does not deserve to be in power. So this government has to be kicked out, like yesterday. But unfortunately, again, you have a nation, a Liberian nation state, a group of voters who don't care. We can sit here all day and talk about what needs to be done, but at the end of the day, it is Liberian voters who need to be able to hold the government accountable, who need to be able to say, we're going to vote with our electoral cards, we're going to vote with our feet. But you're not going to see that, Dennis. You're going to have individuals tomorrow morning, day after tomorrow, conglomerate at the executive mansion or wherever George Will goes, his church, and look for a bag of rice and $5 and t-shirts and stuff like that. And this is the way that you want your country to be governed. Again, like Dr. Dunn told us, every people perhaps deserve every people have the government that they deserve. Perhaps the Liberian people deserve this government. Unfortunately, we have to say that at this time. How do you elect someone who was untested? How do you elect someone who is not who is a celebrity, who is a sports star? I get that, and I love we all love him. He was a terrific soccer player, but he cannot govern. He can't govern, and that's the point of it. He cannot govern, and this is inexcusable. It has happened again and again and again. Dennis, this is going to continue to happen. We're going to come around again and talk about another death, another either low-profile death or murder, I should say, or another high-profile murder. And it is really, really unacceptable. And the one thing I urge the Liberian people to do, maybe the one person that George Weah listens to, or this government listens to, is the United States ambassador to Liberia. Maybe they can talk to the United States ambassador, and he will he'll put out a press release, and George Weah will listen. Unfortunately, this is what we have going on now in Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. Gonglo.
Well, Dennis, first, just like all else, let me extend my deepest sympathy to the family. It is a sad thing whenever you lose a close family person that you're not going to see anymore. I mean, you don't know if you guys going to ever meet, whether in heaven or in some place in the in outer space. So it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to I know what the family is going through, particularly in the mix of the economic hardship in Liberia, and you have such a thing. Um, the family, going to be looking for a way to bury their dead, and it's a challenge for them. And by the same time, I wonder how they slept last night, and how they sleeping tonight. They probably sleeping whenever they hear anything and a sound. They're wondering if somebody is not even trying to break into their home. But I mean, on previous show, I made a statement. I try to compare Liberia with Haiti. Most of Haiti history, because it's a French-speaking country, most of the things that I've tried to read, most of them are written. When you Google something, you see it in French. But the little thing I'm getting, Haiti did not arrive at where it is today, just a very ungovernable society. No, it didn't arrive just there by night. I see that Liberia is gradually reaching to that point because historically, past governments in Liberia have failed to respect the rule of law. They have failed to hold anyone accountable. They have failed to do anything that a functioning democracy, a functioning society should do, a civilized society should do, fail to do. The only thing they've not failed to do is to steal from the public coffer. That's the only thing they've not failed to do. The only thing they've not failed to do is to build big houses, to build houses for girlfriends, send their children to best schools overseas. Those are the things they've not failed to do. And what happens to such society is you are creating a different group of people who will come and always have access to better life and have access to better job. And they continue to lead, while other kids who come from villages like where I came from have to struggle. And just by the blessing of God, sometimes they make it in life. Okay. So we are heading in a process where sooner or later we're going to have a Liberia that will be headed to Haiti. And I blame just not the voter, but also blame our education system. And when you blame the education system, we blame the ruling class, the political class. They have invested in illiteracy, and they are what Liberia is doing today in terms of armed robbery, in terms of crimes, because crime is also related to corruption in a sense. Corruption is the most destructive tool in any nation. Corruption takes away all of what the country needs to stand on to grow. Corruption affects all of that. It is the fabric, the foundation of growth. Corruption is everything. So what you have now, we are headed towards a calamity. And for me, 2023 is I see as a transition between whether Liberia will be firmly on the path to becoming a Haiti or Liberia will actually retrogress. And or make a progress. And the way we do it is to elect, and our voters should insist on putting the main issue on the table: rule of law, accountability. We should do that. We are a country that give all the powers to only elected officials and give all the glory to people with power. Government after government is seriously saying. We are at a point where I thought really would have taken even on the hieroglyphs issue to reopen our case. I can always never forget the fact that a citizen, very educated, CPA holder, will walk to a hotel, a recognized hotel in Liberia, and the body is found. Someone who is driver, I'm going to a meeting. They say he went on the beach. That type of killing, I don't know how it's different from even what is happening under the Weah administration. The next government will come and say, you know what, we don't need to investigate what happened at the former Chief Justice House. This is the pattern in Liberia. We are a selfish nation. Whoever gets in power is always concerned about their survivability for that moment.
Thank you, Mr. Gongo.
Before them.
Thank you, Dr. Dukley. Just 30 seconds to conclude on this. I mean, what is responsible for this? And it's not just at the home of the former Chief Justice, it's all over the place. What is responsible and how can we end this? Please unmute. Dr. Du, please unmute yourself.
I mean, the easiest way to end it is to say, okay, let's have a security system that works to protect the people, not just one that wear berets and T-shirts and walk around. And that's the only way to do it. That you have a professional security system, and we thought we had one because that police was trained, formed by the UN. They had people with them for 5-6 years, training them, talking to them every day. And then all of a sudden, it's like Topo said, we go to America, we learn all the good things. You get to Robbery, you put it down, you say, okay, I'm home. And you go back to your old habits. I think we just need a professional security system, but not just that, but one that is not like, you have to make a difference between the political power and security system. Security is to protect the people and the states. But if you become a flag bearer for a politician, you don't know what you're doing. You actually are working against your own principles. So I think that's what we need. And to have a professional security system, we need to have a power that is confident enough to say, yes, our government is confident enough, powerful enough to deal with these issues, and anybody commits any crime, we go after you. But if you don't have that, you will have these things continue. And like everybody said, it's going to continue. I was the first one time I said, if we're not careful, we're going to be like Haiti. People say, oh, no, Haiti is different. No, it's not. This is how it happened. 1, 2, 3, drip, and then all of a sudden you have an avalanche of issues that you can't even control anymore. We know how to a war.
And Thomas, please unmute. You get the last 30 seconds on this one. Is it kind of gloom and doom thing here? Or if we think that, Mr. Gonglo talked about education, Dr. Dukley talked about the educational system, but sometimes like the chicken or the egg, which one comes first here? Is it that we get a better president, or we get this president, or we get how we do it?
So Dennis, I think this is a very complex problem. Liberia is still recovering from the war that we fought. And to me, the one thing that worries me is the reactivation of those people who fought in the war. I think after the Civil War for the past 12 years, the country tried as much as people to be able to deactivate these people so that they don't come close to arms, they don't come close to ammunition. And when you hear these things that are happening and you dig behind it, it gets linked to some of these people. And so it's a combination of everything that the other panelists are saying, because in many instances, people who participated in the war were not educated, they came from very poor backgrounds, and then in the process of rebuilding our army, they were left out, some for very valid reasons. But for them to be brought back into the space where they can have access to people in powerful positions, where they can be able to run errands for people who are in position. So, I mean, as I went through this thing today, I was thinking it is not only now, because when you listen to people, everyone is saying, okay, the 2023 election is coming, the 2023 election is coming, but even beyond the elections, let's say this party does not remain in power, but because they have reactivated some of these people who are very dangerous in the society, and they even go into opposition, are they going to use these people to continue to cause problem in a country? And Africa is also becoming a kind of region that is not very stable at this point in time. Like I was listening to a news a couple of days ago, the military government that is in, I think Burkina Faso just asked the French government to leave, and they are taking their forces to Senegal and Ivory Coast. So if you have all of these threats coming from the north, coming down our region, and you have a country where you have Zogos can do anything, they can kill anybody. I was watching a video 2 days ago where the Zogos are going and taking motorbikes that belong to motorbike riders, to the extent where they even want to kill people and take the bikes from them. So it's like the whole society is just vulnerable. The country is vulnerable. When there's an incident and it's reported at 9 o'clock, the police will come 1 to 2 o'clock. So it's really a breakdown in the system where we're trying to rebuild our security sector and to really build trust in the security sector. Because when you have all of these things going on now, then that bondage, that link between communities and security, we're trying to do community policing, we're trying to build trust in the army. When you see the comments that have been coming from the army, either on February 11 or all of that. So to me, it's just further breaking down that confidence that the citizens have in the security sector. And it's going to take time to build. All of these things are building on the foundation that this country was built on. Like one of the panelists said, we've invested for over 200 years into illiteracy, and therefore it's really difficult for us to be able to build a system. And even when we talk about governance, if you don't have security, how will the institutions continue to thrive? So I think it's a complex problem, but like everyone is saying, we just have to see where the election goes from here, and then how we can try to be able to rebuild those institutions that have been broken down over the past 5 to 6 years.
And I really try to leave to get to the other subject, but I mean, being a former teacher, I'm looking at Mr. Salif body language. He wants to say something so badly. Mr. Salif, and this is the governance question now. And just recently, I think a couple of days ago, a hometown girl lost her son because they thought that he was a rogue, and they just mobbed him to death. I mean, a young man, like he is late 20s, early 30s. His life cut short because by the time they say rogue, you are dead. You can't even see anything. Where are we going? Put on your governor's hat here and at least console me, give me hope.
Well, you know, I mean, there's some prospects, and it's always not lost.
Today. I'm sorry, Ahmed. I'm saying that's exactly what happens in Haiti today. When you're in a different territory and all of people just shout, "This is the person," you are dead in a minute. That's why you just described.
Yeah. No.
How is it that Liberia is far from Haiti?
Unfortunately, he's right. That's on the rise. Really, the mob violence, among the motorcyclists. If they say there's an accident involving any of them, you're advised to just flee the scene and find safety somewhere, maybe at a police station, before you can talk it out. Right? Don't you stop to try to see, because they'll burn you alive, they burn your vehicle alive. But beyond that, Dennis, you're asking about governance. I think it boils down to poverty. It boils down to bread and butter issues. And it boils down to really like that confidence that Thomas was talking about, trust in the system. Because if you know that there are consequences to your behavior as an armed robber or petty thief in the street, or somebody who is a hired assassin, or any of that, there are consequences. There's a law, there's rule of law in the country. You think about your behavior, right? So you put a blame on the one hand on the ruling elite and the executive and so forth and so on. But generally, I think if people, this is not a hungry society, because it's a big rent-seeking system. The people fight to get in politics for their own sake, not for the sake of public service, not for the sake of the citizens of the country. They really try to get into public service, control budget, and plunder the country, thief it all out for themselves. I tell friends and relatives who are kind of engaged in this kinds of things, and say, look, you can build a mansion and put bullet tank and everything, all this gigantic generator, you have an oasis of comfort, right? But you are as poor as the person living in the zinc shack next to your house, because even the road leading to your house is a challenge to get to your home. And then you have all these people who are very impoverished, who are poor, and because you've contributed to that, and you want to believe that you are well-to-do, you're successful. It's not a successful society. This is a society where you have widespread poverty with pockets of so-called prosperity amidst, all these dysfunctional systems that we're talking about. So governance, you want somebody who, someone may say, look, it doesn't all boil down to a president or to a leader, but leadership, I don't care who it is, competent leadership matters. Competent leadership matters. Then you begin to organize systems. You begin to create confidence, inspire citizens. And so then the conduct, people will guide our conduct, you instill trust in the system. That's where we need to begin before we start to look at other aspects of this. Unfortunately, we're not there. We're very far away from there. Any political party, even that's wanting to become the next president, they haven't demonstrated to me how they'll be different than in terms of corruption and just rent seeking and thievery. They haven't demonstrated that to me.
Thank you, Mr. Yonton. Mr. Salif talk about people coming to power, and you are a strong supporter of Mr. Bwaka. I don't see is security in arrest.
Arrest encompasses everything. It is the driving vehicle that we, at the level of the Black camp, going to use to address major issues. And then we'll go back to this issue that Mr. Barker always talk about. One of the fundamental problems of our society today is this culture of impunity. And he's been very strong-worded on that.
I never heard from Mr. Barker about impunity.
Come again?
I said I'd never heard from Mr. Bwaka about the culture of impunity.
He's conducted a lot of interviews, and specifically.
I mean, I don't hear everything, so
spoke about the culture of impunity, and what we see happening right now is a perpetuation of that culture. I was watching a video today of a young man in Nima County that was tied by the hands and placed at the back of a motorbike, and the motorbike rider just pulled up and dragged him to death. A sad incident.
But the same video I saw, but the person sent it to me, said River G County. So I'm
okay. I think I missed the county, but a sad incident, whether River G or whatever. We see this all around happening. Now, on one hand, you have a government that lacks the capacity to protect all of its citizens. The 2021 NAMO report was clear that 93% of all of our citizens do not trust the security apparatus in the country. You have people who are in government, who are so close to power, are forming their own factions and using that faction overnight against citizens who have dissent against the government. You have cases of partisan security joining the security forces, the Liberian National Police. We have not addressed these fundamental issues, these fundamental flaws within our society. And now you have the citizens left on their own, traumatized by this state of recklessness and taking the law into their own hands to protect themselves in any shape, form, and manner. That's what we have going on. And someone mentioned that, this boils down to education. There may be a lot of intricacies, there may be a lot of intersectionalities, but education is not one of the sole reasons why we have a collapse of our national security apparatus. It could not be one. Even in advanced civilized societies, there's still people who hire assassins. There's still cases of political deaths. But what we have is a complete blanket failure of this government to protect its citizens. And we must point this out clear and point. Where has failed his people on many fronts, including providing security. Let's look at the national budget. Let's look at what the president has in the budget for himself versus what is being apportioned for the national security. These are the fundamental issues we should be raising. And the question about security must border around this election, must be on the ballot.
Right. And Mr. Yonton, I want to go to Mr. Sharif, just to be fair now, since everybody has spoken besides Sharif and Gonglo now, is like what Mr. Yonton is saying, about security issue. The problem is we really don't see a clear alternative, someone articulating these things that this is what I'm going to do differently, for instance, to improve the security sector. Are you hearing that, Mr. Sharif?
Is that for me? Okay, so look, I'm not going to belabor this point. Ahmed has encapsulated very well the points that I will, that I've, thought about making now. So so leadership is very crucial. So we don't have a leader who is going to take the lead, right? So right now, the country is in crisis, but where is the president? Is there a nation? Has there ever been a nationwide address, or even a press conference addressing these issues? Right, these are existential issues that affect the Liberian nation state, and you don't see the president. The president is largely absent, and so we can talk about education. We can talk about all the different factors and externalities. But at the end of the day, the president is the leader of the of the Republic of Liberia who takes the lead. He is absent. He is missing. And I think Ahmed also added that the alternative. What is the alternative tonight? Tomorrow morning, what is the opposition saying? Have we seen anything? I know the opposition supporters are going to come out here now and say, you talk about opposition like this, but I'm trying. Let me hear something from the opposition. What is your alternative? Hold this government feet to the fire. You have opposition legislators. What are they doing tonight? What are they going to do tomorrow morning? Is the Minister of Justice going to go to Capitol Hill and testify? Somebody has to be held accountable for all of these deaths, mysterious deaths that is going around, not just Monrovia, but the entire country.
Thank you, Mr. Gonglo. You on mute and you get the. Please be brief. We want to go to the next subject.
Well, but I just want to probably just provide a few clarification. I listened to Ahmed that he doesn't hear a clear articulation of some of the issues from the opposition, and I also listened to Mr. Yonton. But I like to be very clear. If I Dennis asks a question, I like to be very clear on the record. I think Councillor Gongwe is one person in the opposition that has been very clear on rule of law. In fact, he has been very specific that within the first 100 days, if he's elected, he's going to come out with executive order to make sure that the police we exercise the function, the duties of the police unhindered by any public official, by any government official. He's going to make it as a crime. He's going to, by executive order, that the police should function. Because those of you who are loyal like Ahmed, the police is at the foundation of fighting crime. The police is at the foundation of protecting the civilian population and the society. And he has also said very clearly that he's also going to come up with executive order that no
It's freezing.
judges at times just maybe suppress ordinary people's rights in the court system because maybe they're going against a minister or they have a dispute with the president or girlfriend or the president relative or the minister girlfriend or and so forth. So he wants, if he's the president, he wants to be very clear from the get-go that this is what will happen if a minister interferes with judicial function. This is a penalty. If a minister or any official of government interfere with police exercise or police duty, this is a punishment. If you allow these two critical elements in the justice system to function, the court system and the police unhindered, knowing that the president of the country has their backing, I think we'll make some degree of progress very fast in fighting crime, in restoring confidence in the system. And that's what is lacking today. And this was lacking not just under we are administration, though. We must be very clear. The history of Liberia is very clear with that. The lack of interest or confidence in the justice system is not a recent thing. It's an old age thing.
Thank
I
you.
would not have gone to Door Police in the 80s when we were at the university. I would not go there. I would not go to Jacob Nimlin. I would not. I didn't have trust for Jacob Nimlin's CRD. Someone can say the same today of we are police. Someone, Henry Costa would not trust the police under Salif. Henry Costa would not trust the police under Salif. So it depends on the different actors. You know, the justice system, because we have not have a clear, unambiguous message from the head of state, from the president of the country, the judicial system and the police function has always not been fully exercised.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday. Now, let's talk tough about the census. The census result have been announced. The last census was 2008. We're expecting census 2018. That didn't happen. The WIA government have been scrambling for money and other resources to have a census. It came up time that, we thought it was never going to happen. Now it's happened. So today was an elaborate program. Yesterday, an elaborate program commemorated say, yes, we did it. In fact, they call that the digital census, the first of its kind, whatever that means. So let's talk about the census a little bit. While I was preparing for this, I started to do a little bit of reading on the census. That census, there are three factors that determine the population growth. The birth rate, or the natality, the number of births in a given period of time in a population. The mortality, that is the occurrence of death among the defined population. The migration, that is people moving from one place to the other, either for work or to stay there for a specific period of time. So we went in the census according to what was announced, and this was published in the Daily Observer newspaper as well. And this is, I struggled to put this up because I wanted to authenticate, and I authenticated as real, that for census this year, Grand Crew County was 57,913. Now is 109,342. River G is now 124,000. Grand Gita 125,000, and on and on and on. So if you look at that, the growth rate, they have grown. You see, Maserado, as you see, River says is the least populated, Maserado being the highest. It was also reported that the country's population stands at 5.2 million, an increase of 50.4% when compared to the 2008 census, which was 3.5 million. Still reading from the census report, it says, this represents a population gain of over 1.7 million people in the space of 14 years, with urban growth up by 52%, while rural growth is down by 48%. And I will add, except Grand Crew. When it comes to male and female, the data also show that 50.4% of the county's 5.2 million people are male, while the female population is 49.6, giving a national sex ratio of 101.5 males for every 100 females. We almost, equal. Mr. Gonglo, you've participated in a lot of in some of these things, and Mr. Salif, the policy guys, also know one or two things about these things. Let me start with you, Mr. Gonglo. Let's get it clear. What is census, and why do people conduct census? And let me also add, how is census, or the housing and population census, how is it different from voter registration?
Dennis, thank you. First, let me say this, just as a warning. When it comes to discussing statistics and data in Liberia, I'm usually a reluctant professional on this matter, because our population, including the educated people and the not too educated people, still do not understand data. And I can empathize with that situation, because government itself has not embraced the use of data for policy making and for many things. So because even the government are putting money to collect the data, can be suspicious of the data itself, Then what more about the ordinary people who don't even know how the process is? So so I'm usually a little bit reluctant because I struggle with this when I work at Ministry of Labor. When we said the unemployment rate in Liberia at the time was 3.7%, President said, he said, I can't announce it. I can't announce it. They will say, I cooked this, did. I said, but madam, don't believe me. Look at the unemployment rate in Africa Coast. Ask for in Sierra Leone. Ask for in Nigeria. Ask for in Ghana. There's no different from what I'm telling you. It will be between 2.5% to 5.5%. For developing country, it's always low. So we struggle with that. And she refused to announce, to accept that until maybe 2 years later before the government could announce it, right? Which was more or less not useless. It was not used for it again. So on this is a preliminary data that is just coming up. And for the record, I didn't work with like a field worker per se, but I was on the census board in 2008, representing the Ministry of Labor. And I'm aware of some of the challenges that were associated with that census. I'm one of those who believe that Liberia population is actually more than 5 million people.
We want to set the basis. Let's just define why people conduct census, because there's a lot of confusion out there.
There's so many reasons. In fact, one of the reasons we do that, there is a UN convention on census itself. All countries, that are member of the United Nations sign to that. So you do that every 10 years, okay? It's not cast in stone. So this is why census around the world, particularly for developing countries, United Nations is heavily involved. It's not just done by the country alone. Even countries that are, really resourced, like Nigeria, South Africa, that even have a watershed of professionals, PhD statisticians. They still have experts from United Nations that come from other countries to work with them. Okay, so it's more or less that's how United Nations get standardized data on countries around the world, and they use that, and there are criteria you go through, and there are measurement there are tools you must use, so that the data from each country can be compared with other countries. There's a big phrase they say, international comparability. Okay, and that is done with all of the statistics, whether it's labor statistics, whether it's population statistics, or whatever. There's set rules, set tools you must use, procedure you must go through. If you meet those benchmarks, they can now compare what is in Liberia, what is in Africa Coast, or what is in Ghana or the United States. Okay.
Thank you.
So I must say I haven't read much about this census that is still in process, because this is just the preliminary outlook of what happened.
Definitely. Thank you.
We say the details is in the devil. There are much more things, parameters you need to look at to validate the broad figure that is being given. But Dennis, I will add this. Just I know you want to ask other question. You want to move on.
Yeah, I want to move to Thomas and
resources online that you can go to. The United Nations projection on Liberia actually put Liberia population at 5.4 million. So what is coming out now is even less than United Nations population projection on Liberia. But we can look at many other aspects of it.
Right. Yeah, and we'll come to that. Thomas, give me some background here. What is this census thing is all about? What is it supposed to do? I know a lot of people are focused on the election. So tell us, why do we have census, and what does the data from census tell us?
So, like Mr. Gongolo said, census is something that is not only important to individual countries, it's also important to the international community, because I think a couple of months ago, there was this announcement that the world population has reached, I think, 8 billion or so. And you might wonder, where do these numbers come from? They come from the individual countries around the world. And so we have to conduct these censuses to be able to know exactly how many persons are in a specific country. And for our case, it's constitutional. We have to do it every 10 years. That's why when we did it in 2008, we have to do another one in 2018. But coming to the question, why do we conduct them? Census is actually the foundation of any statistical system that you have in a country. So that's the bedrock. That's the foundation. First, you have to know how many persons are in the country before you then move on to any other secondary statistics. Like he was saying, if we want to do a labor force survey, we then use the census data as our population, and then we can draw a sample out of that to do a labor force survey. So census is done to be able to help us get that population, to help us know how many persons are in the country. And there's also a reason why it's called the National Population and Housing Census, right? Because they also gave us an idea of the stock of the houses that we have in our country, and help us to know what are the kinds of houses that we have. Is it thatch houses? Like if you go out in the interior, you see some houses that are built, people don't even have zinc to be able to put over them. They stay using thatches. And so that also gave us an idea of poverty distribution. Because if people don't have money to be able to buy zinc, in many instances, they fall in different categories when it comes to the income classification. So what census will do for us is it gave us an idea of how many persons we have, what are the houses that we have, and then it provides us that data that we can be able to use as a foundation to do all of the different statistical analysis. Like you said, the Ministry of Education can do a census on how many students we have in school. But all of that, we have to have a foundation. So that's why we have LISGIS, to be able to collect this information every 10 years. And in the interval between one and the other, they can now be able to use that census data to do a number of other analysis in all the other sectors that they want to do the analysis in. And overall, what do we do with the data? We use it for different purposes, for elections. I think that's why people are talking about the 2023 elections. I think the Constitution says that when we conduct a census and there's an ensuing election, we should be able to do district demarcation and all of that. It's still not clear whether we'll be able to use this census data to be able to do that. But beyond using it for election, we use census for other development planning. We use it for resource allocation. And this is one thing that is very important because we now have a revenue sharing for, bill or law that was passed in 2022 that is now going to have an intergovernmental transfer system between the central government and local governments, where taxes that will be collected by the central government will be shared with local government. And population is one key parameter for sharing that. So I think it's important as Liberians look at this census report and look at where population has grown close to 100% and where it has not grown close to 100%. They should not only look at the 2023 election. There are far-reaching implications of the census report and the data beyond 2023.
And Dennis, if I may just add...
Hold on, Mr. Gonglo.
Oh, okay.
I just want us to be clear, right? Because here is Mr. Livingston saying, how can Grand Cru and River G have more population than Mangibi? And this is not from the census. According to the census that I put on the screen, Grand Cru, if you look at this, Grand Cru is 109,342. Mangibi is 304,000. So that information is not correct. Mangibi is by far more than Grand Cru and River G. I just want us to be clear.
So you see the challenge there. Somebody is misleading the public with that comment.
Right. So Mr. Salif, when they say they're going to collect census data, now this one is called housing and population. What is it that is collected? What does that information mean? And so what would be the downside if census data is manipulated, or if anything goes wrong with the data that we are collecting?
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Kane and Mr. Gonglo both laid a foundation for in terms of sort of big picture why you conduct census. There are other kinds of surveys that a country undertakes for different purposes. So, for example, when I worked in Liberia for a major donor government, one thing that we led and pushed messages in the government across to do was called HIES, Household Income and Expenditure Survey, which helps to establish a national account calculation of a country to understand, issues around exports, to understand balance of payment, to understand GDP and GNI and things like that. So some big macroeconomic pictures. It's different kinds of surveys help you to do that. So you do the health and demographic survey in the health sector to understand health outcomes. What are the challenges? Where do we have different health infrastructure? How many doctors? How many nurses? So for policy option selections, you do the health sector survey. You can do an education. You do HIES, should be across the country. Whereas you try to identify. One thing we impressed on the government actually was a condition that the donors said. If you don't have a data use plan, which means identify different data points for which you use this survey, not just one thing. And so, for example, who are your clients in the government? The central bank, the Ministry of Education, Agriculture, you can, finance ministry, an institution that really are heavy on data, right? So those are different sectoral surveys or censuses, you might want to say. In terms of housing and population census, every 10 years, constitutionally, as Thomas has said, this is a constitutional mandate for the government to basically count its citizens, all categories and manners of people, to understand how many houses are there, how many households, how many household heads, how many school-going children, how many elderly people do we have who are foreign nationals in our country, who are just residents in our country, who are the citizens, how are the population movements, what kind of migration patterns do we have, things like those, how many deaths have we had, for example, or what's the birth rate, so we can plan in terms of mortality and health outcomes in that respect, but also for a political district demarcation, political redistricting, and things like that. So a census helps you to determine revenue mobilization, for instance, to determine expenditure, to determine raising revenue, and then what kind of policy options do you need because of the type of population you have and so forth and so on. And that's the domestic policy. On the foreign policy front, how do you then take this to translate this into foreign policy mechanisms? How do you interact with multilateral partners, bilateral partners, the United Nations population funds, and so forth? So census is such a critical undertaking for a country to get right. I mean, statistically, Mr. Gongo is a statistician. You won't get it 100% right, right? But for them to even say that they reach 5 point something million people, to me, this is a provisional result. I don't really want to go into it, but I was a little bit taken aback. But census, by and large, is a UN back, is a constitutional mandate. You want to do it so that you are able then to govern well.
Thank you. Mr. Yonton, I saw when the census, the result came out, people came out and said, I wasn't counted, right? And some of them are politicians. What is the danger when we put politics into this? And I know we can avoid that, but what you make of the way politicians are not coming to say I was not counted? Well, census it will be impossible to count everybody. That's the first thing. So what's your take? I know you don't want to talk politics. I know you're an MBA guy. You know these things. So give me something on the whole idea of this census. Your take on it, and especially from the political standpoint, that people saying, "Oh, I was not counted." Is it something that is designed to discredit the census result, or what's happening here?
So I think one of the flaws associated with the entire process was seen from the entire ongoing of it. Besides the lack of infrastructure, the entire leaches were clouded with questions of integrity and corruption, clouds of corruption. Um, as much as politicians are interested in the outcome of this process for political reasons, but it's important to note that all of our citizens across this country are interested. Because if you have a process where you have unaccounting of certain population, it makes us to question the vitality of the preliminary census report. Now, in 2008, when the last census was conducted, Liberia had a population growth rate at about 2.1%. And based on that, the World Bank and other institutions that are clouded with the authority to estimated our population at around 5.4 million. This preliminary report clearly says that we've dropped in terms of the magnitude speed of our population growth rate um, to about 1.8. But then when you look at the disaggregation, take for example, in counties that witness high increase in population, like Grand Creek County, almost 88% increase in population, then you ask yourself, what is driving um, the migration of people, whether it's from Monrovia or Central Liberia, Bon County, or even within the Southeast region? What is driving the mobility of people from any location to Grand Creek County? It's the same as other counties, right? So you don't want to only look at the political, the economic implication, because we are at a crucial time in our nation history.
Mr. Young, let me interrupt a little bit, because the increase is not, migration alone is not responsible. Birth too. Maybe people in Grand Crew are giving birth to twins and triplets.
So the people born in Grand Creek more than the born in Monserrato, right?
Because maybe probably there's nothing to do, so they go to bed around 6 o'clock.
Yeah, they ain't got TV, so they go to bed earlier. But the point here is that the significance of this process must not only be tied to the politics of it. Yes, constitutionally, this process is significant to allow electoral representation, right? So new districts will be formed, more representatives. I doubt if our country, if we have the capacity to add on the 103 lawmakers that we have, to add a few more of them over when we are already struggling with national resource constraint. So I think we have to look more on the economics. There's a whole host of people, like I was reading the preliminary result. You have over 50% of the population, right, that have not acquired formal education. So that means that we have to start thinking empirically and policy-wise in how we can address the pool of people that have not acquired quality education. We have the issue of mental health, all right, that we are still in denial, even in this day and age, after 14 years of civil war. So the policy prescription, how resources are allocated, and how government can now use these the census data for informed decision making, is to me the most critical part of this entire process. And we don't need to overlook that.
Mr. Yonto, you talk about, you are reading the census report. Is it on the Legis website, or where is that?
The report?
Yeah.
It was presented. It was presented. I listened to the
Oh, you listened. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I thought you were reading
it. Was part
because
of this aggregation. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm interested, Dr. Duke, I'm interested in more details. I think the details will be out in May, they say, because I wanted to know, which, I don't know, how it is growing, how many, we just hear male and female. I wanted to see age. I want to also see, because census is counting everybody, regardless of whether you're a Liberian citizen or not. I don't know if we can make that delineation in the report. Those who are non-Liberians, I don't know how they how it goes, but I'm interested in seeing more detail to have more confidence in the numbers. Right? It's not on the website yet, and you've watched census before. You were there when it happened 2008. This one is different. You agree? On mute, please. You unmuted and muted.
I think the problem we have is issue of confidence. When you don't trust the process, when you don't trust the messenger, whatever they tell you, say, "Mama, you lie, man." We've been waiting for census for what, 5-6 years. It was supposed to be done in 2018. It never happened. Nobody talked about it. Now they come up overnight In a few weeks, they're going through the country. They hired thousands of people to do this. I'm going to say, Mama, you've been lying to me all along. Why should I believe you? Why would people in Grand Crew multiply their population by 2 in 4 years? What have you been doing? Oh, man, we got one man now in a mansion so we can make more babies. Or we got one man in a mansion, we can all move back home to Grand Crew. I'm not a statistician, but you can read through the lines. I mean, you can read this thing, very easily. You can understand what is right. Something jump at you and say, "Oh, you said population in the rural area went down, in the cities went up." But Grand Crew, to me, I went to Grand Crew. I traveled through Grand Crew many times to go to Maryland. That's not an urban area. So if the growth applies to urban area, so Grand Crew cannot have 109,342. It's nice to put 342 at the end of it, like as if you went through the details. But as I said, when the boy lie, he be lying to you. He come back in from the market. He say, "Yeah, this is what I bought." You say, "No, mama, you didn't do that."
Dr. we always hear numbers can lie. These are numbers.
Yeah, but it's numbers. But I can't audit these numbers. We not know. But how are we going to audit these things? How are we going to go compare? Is Governor going to go to NIMBA and say, "Okay, I'm going to count everybody one by one and make sure the NIMBA population is this"? How are we going to audit it? You can't audit it. Somebody come, the government gives you numbers. You either take it or leave it. Because nobody has the capacity to go back and count how many people live in Liberia except the government. They're supposed to have a mechanism to do it. They're supposed to have the money to do it. They're supposed to have the technicians to do it. But you had a show one time about leges, how they stole, corruption and all of these things. And then from that, we found ourselves with something new numbers. And Gonglo said that UN projection was higher. Well, maybe it was very smart to put it below the UN's number so that people can say, nobody can say you cheated. I don't understand. I don't know statistics, but I don't think Grand Crew people had 2 babies every year for the last 5 years to multiply their population by 2. I don't know. I know Grand Crew. I passed through, I slept there, ate there, but I'm not sure. That's my one point. But I think it has to do with confidence. The fact that we're talking about it, if they had started doing this a year ago and say, we're going to take our time, we're supposed to do this 6 years ago, we didn't do it. But now we're going to take our time to do it and go county by county and take 11 months to do it and tell us exactly what happened. Maybe people wouldn't have this discussion. So it's issues about confidence in the messenger, confidence in the people, confidence in the government. If it's not there, you question everything.
Right. And Mr. Sherry, I don't know if you were able to call Grand Crew or River G because and I will come to Mr. Gonglo before you, Mr. Sharif. Mr. Gonglo, just quickly, the census, they should give us the number of person in each town, right? Or is that going to come later? They should. Does it give ages too? Does it give a grade? Because the people, I wanted to see if we have young people, if we have old people, if we have, that breakdown.
Dennis,
is that what's coming in May?
Dennis, census is the most single massive data collection undertaking in a country, anywhere in the world, whether it is the United States. When the tabulation begins, they're actually going to do it, they call it the cohorts, age cohorts, from 0 to 5. How many Liberians fall in that category? They'll give, and like they build it on like that, from 5 to 9, just like that. They will build and give the age. So you get the age structure of the population. That will be like at the national level. Then they break that down to the county level. They even go by ethnic group as well. How many Grego people, how many Grand people, how many Maningo people. It's a massive tabulation.
Because I was going to verify, I was going to call Dudlukan. if I wanted to see Dominican population, then I just call.
But Dennis, so yeah. So, but here is the thing I wanted to just one of the thing I wanted to just flesh out
Briefly,
quick.
so I can go to Mohammed.
Yeah, because I heard Yonton talk about it, and I heard another partner talk about some of the government officials say I was never counted. You don't have to be counted. In Nigeria, I would just ask a simple question: do you believe in Nigeria with its complex structure? Do you think they go when they conduct census in Nigeria, they count all Nigeria? They don't. They reach as many people they can reach. There are statistical tools they use to look at the previous census growth, population growth rate. They take into consideration other results available to smooth the population and say, yeah, this is really it. I think the challenge that people are having now, which is understandable, is the allocation of the population. But the national population itself, it was undercounted. It was undercounted. I spoke.
You can say undercounted because a projection of 5.4 million. If you fall short, that was a projection. I mean, we are Ebola, so other factors may affect it.
So Dennis, let me tell you this. Let me tell other people who are listening. I spoke to a staff of someone who worked with the census process in detail today. For every census, for you to come and say, I'm going to hire 50 people to go out there to interview. You look at how many persons you want to interview, how many days you want to interview the people, and then you determine how long each interview will take. Then you determine whether you need 50 or you need 30 persons, right? It's the same with the census. They sit down, experienced guys, they look at the mapping,
right?
The map.
They did that.
They do the mapping and determine that we need 9,000 enumerators because we have X number of enumeration area, and we need each enumeration area we need this, or we need that. Then they determine. So for legislators to come and say they need X thousands of enumerators around the country, that's what they went through. When I spoke to that guy, who was one of the meat technician, he said when they did that, when they did their mapping, their projection, what the projection was 6 million Liberians. So when they did, that's how they even came up with the projection that when they need X number of enumerators for this process that just ended. The field work just ended. So even what they come now is grossly undercounted, But the challenge we are having now is just because of assigning number to the counties. This is where the controversy is. The controversy is not really with the overall population of the country. And the confusion they're having, which is really not necessary, because they're not going to use that. It's not for election. Maybe for constituency demarcation, allocation of, or like Yonton said, it will be not good for Liberia to even increase the number of legislators or constituency representation, which I agree with him. We should actually bring down the number, and maybe increase the ratio. But we should not jump that because Grand Crew or Grand Leader is this. It means that's the number of voters that will be there. No.
Thank you. And Mr. Sharif, I want you to come in now. And let's talk about your take on the census. There's a lot of noise about what Mr. Gonglo spoke about as a Grand Crew. The president's counter. You see, the president was there. And also there was a light, and also built estate housing units there. So is it possible? A lot of people moving there because of those units, or the street lights, and also River G. And that's why I'm interested. If you see, maybe if you call Global and see what the population is like.
Dennis, I could say, both sides have a point, in this sort of dispute. When the last census was taken in 08, I believe it was 08, ever since then, there has been, several things going on. For example, there have been movements. So let's not forget that, across the West African region, there have been instability in some countries. For example, Burkina Faso. And if you remember, there are discussions that, thousands of Burkinabes have moved into the southeast. Now, when the census takers are looking at these, how are they? I'm interested to know from a statistician, how are they counting, the new arrivals that have moved in? So that is something that, those are data points that we can look at. Maybe some of those
they
people
have...
have...
Mr. Sharif, we just need a breakdown so we see.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. And that is that's a challenge that we, that Liberia always have, right? So where is the breakdown? And Gonglo said the devil is always in the details, but we don't have the details. You go on Lister's website, it's not there. And so and it's and it's unfortunate that we can't get the details. If we have those details, then perhaps it will answer a lot of questions. But I agree. I mean, it's a projection. It doesn't have to be exact, but at the same time, we have to see those details. One of the things, Dennis, that jumps out to me is, and I want to comment on, is Montserrat. Of course, we know that Montserrat continue, the Monrovia and its suburban areas continue to grow, right? So what is the government? Now, Monrovia, the city of Monrovia was not built to host, this many number of people. Now you have about 2 million people living in the city of Monrovia. It wasn't built for that. So what is the government doing now to be able to address issues, the social issues that we've already talked about? What is this government doing to address those issues that come with, quadrupling the population of Monrovia? And I don't think these guys have answers. I don't think they go to bed at night worrying about these kinds of things that you and I and all of us are discussing here right now. And that's the problem. And that's the scary part, because they're not concerned. You see a lot of people in Monrovia, and what does that contribute to? That contributes to a lot, unemployment, space, living space itself, sanitation and health and sanitation. So there are a lot of issues that come with quadrupling the population of Monrovia. And what does the government have in place for what is going on? They don't have answers. And they're not going, like I said, they're not going to bed at night, thinking about these things. They're not worrying about these things. They're worried about something else, which is, not important at all. And that's the unfortunate reality of Liberia.
Thomas?
Yeah, Dennis, I already wanted to make a quick point.
Sure.
I think the reason why these numbers are raising some eyebrows is, like we are all saying, we need to dig behind them and understand where these groups are coming from. Because like Ahmed was saying, there are other statistical studies that have been conducted before the census. One of it is the demographic health survey. And based on the demographic health survey from 2013 and 2020, they counted that has the highest rate of fertility. That is the number of children that women can born at that time in which they get mature and they reach the stage where they can no longer bear children. The county that has the highest is Grand Bassa, followed by Bapolu and then Cape Mount. So Grand Cru is now among those counties that has the highest fertility rate in the country. And we all do know, like others have said, that Grand Cru is also not one of these counties where a lot of migration is taking place. If these people, the population that has almost double in Grand Cru is based on migration, then we need to know who's going into Grand Cru. So like one of the panelists said, there's already this issue where people are saying that people from Burkina Faso are into Grangida, they are into Maryland. So if they are the ones that are in Grand Cru, then we need to ask the question, what are they doing there? Because if they are there and they are mining our gold and other resources that are there, then this is also something we need to pay attention to. So I think this is why this is raising a lot of eyebrow, because even if you look at the data point, for your population to grow that way, is that your fertility is high, you are borning a lot of children, and not many persons are dying, like the three factors that we just went through. And then a lot of people, net migration into that country is very high, and nobody is leaving. So what is this magnetic pull into a pull factor for Grand Crew and River G that everyone is going there and they are not leaving and people are not dying in high number, they are burning a lot of children. So I think this raises a lot of concern, and when the details come out, we need to follow them carefully. And beyond that, like I said from the beginning, if it comes to resource allocation, if that is not the true population of Grand Crew, of River G, and we allocate resources to them, for instance, we build more schools than they need, then we'll be wasting national resources. Then will not be efficiently allocated. If the population of Lofa, for instance, or Nimba County is not exactly what it is, then we will not be giving them the resources that are required for them to really be able to utilize to improve the lives of people in those counties. So I think we'll all wait for the details to come up, but we really need to dig behind these numbers and see what led to them.
Yeah, Dennis, if I can just make a quick point here. Let
Please
us
be
not,
very quick.
we are all Liberians who watch the scene for years. Let us not pretend or mislead ourselves. Liberian government, whether it's Tower, whether it's Doe, whether it's L.M. Johnson, Sally, Harvard-trained economists in quotation, they've never used population data for anything. The Liberian legislature has never used the census data even for budgeting. We don't allocate our budget based on population. We allocate our budget based on the politics. If you representative, you come from this county and you maybe speaker of the legislature, your county get more. That's how we do it. Everything is politics in Liberia. It's not technical. So
It has not always been that way, Mr.
the
Gongo.
census is there for international donors or international NGO that are working in Liberia. They really make the most use of the census, not the government that invests in collecting data. I mean, it's just the sad truth.
Mr. Yonton.
Yeah, Dennis, I keep hearing this coming up, that because of regional instability, for example, the situation we've witnessed in Mali and Burkina Faso could be a contributing reason for the double sizing of the population in some southeastern counties. I found that incredulous. When you look at the very number in the preliminary report, we are told that Burkina Faso has the total of 4,131 persons. Madian at 1,188. The total of that is 5,319. And you go back to the difference in terms of increase in population in Grand Coup County. It cannot account for that. So let's not start to create a false narrative or find some justification for those who have misled the Liberian people, I must say, to say the least, in terms of these numbers, because these numbers are astonishingly astonishing. To have Grand Coup doubling its size and population in just about 14 years.
And what's your suspicion? What could be the reason for this?
Well, the reason could be tied to politics, and again,
they are not voters, or they want to allocate more resources in Grand Coup. That's why
we have heard a lot of early warnings that have come as the result of this 2023 process. The first we heard was from President Johnson, that this president intends to rig the election. And we are continuing to see systematic step towards that process. So if you double the size of Grand Coup, and we are having a process where we for the first time, Liberia is using biometric, voter registration system, something that we are new to. There is a likelihood, there's a verisimilitude that they can institutionalize the ranking of this election, choose the option of this number. So we be very clear and vigilant that we have to reject numbers in places that do not seem right. And there's no reason, there's nothing wrong with asking for a recount in Grand Coup or for a recount in River G. There's nothing wrong with that. Where there are questions of numbers, we have to state it on the record and demand that recount be done in these counties.
And Mr. Yonton, you keep bringing some numbers here. Please, what's your source of these numbers? What is it from the program they had, and you wrote those down?
Well, the nationality numbers is there. It was there. I can send it to you.
So where you got it from?
from the same report. So you have the list of all of the different nationalities. The
When you
Lebanese.
say report, was it rare? Is it posted anywhere for us to read?
Yes, they did.
Where?
They did a presentation, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we have access. We have copies from the same numbers that you are showing.
No.
This-
I want to be clear on this because I was trying to find it. So I just want you to help me.
I can send it to you. I can send what I have to you.
Yeah, where did you get that from? Is it from Legis? Is it from the
I didn't get it
newspaper?
from the website. I got it from the presentation yesterday.
Oh, they were
The
doing the presentation
presentation.
on TV.
Huh?
Well, you were
The-
doing
the
it on TV. So as they were doing it on TV, were you writing it down or were you screenshotting something?
They did a formal presentation, right? So
Right.
that's where I got it from. The numbers and the data and everything.
I didn't get anything from that presentation that got into the details of it. So we're all sitting here speculating.
No,
So we're
I'm
all
not-
here sitting there speculating.
Yeah, there is
But
a graph.
keep in
There is
mind,
a graph.
excuse
Here's a
me,
graph.
excuse me. Keep in mind that I have family members in Zwedru right now. So I'm not just speaking off the top of my head. One of the things that I don't do is to speak off the cuff. So I am being careful. Again, I'm not a statistician. I find it difficult to say that. But keep in mind that there is a possibility. I'm just saying there's a possibility. And I also told you that the problem that we have is that these guys are not giving us details. That we have to look at the details. Right. In a way, I agree with you, but we're all again speculating here. And from what I'm hearing from places like Zwedru is very much populated right now. So during the first census, there were people still in Ivory Coast. My family members fled to Ivory Coast. They hadn't returned by then. So now you have all these people back. In addition to, don't forget, there were factors in the region. So you cannot forget, you cannot dismiss that there were geopolitical factors in the region, in Ivory Coast. Currently in Burkina Faso, you have Malians and all these people coming down to Liberia, which is really a stable country at this time. We cannot dismiss these factors. This is the reason why it's important for us to get the details. They're not giving us the details. They're not doing themselves a favor. They're not doing us a favor. I don't know where you got this number from, but I'm interested to see
we
if
have
we can
access,
get into the details of it.
We have access to information. This is the population by nationality, part of the preliminary report that came out yesterday.
Where did you get that from, though?
We have access to it, and it came out.
Where?
So from the presentation. So they did a nice PowerPoint, did something, and then we have circulation of different pieces of information.
And you make this available to us?
Yeah, I can send this to Dennis. So this is SOS 2022 Liberia National Population and Housing Census. This is the population by nationality. It says here, people from Burkina Faso, right? The B Faso, have 4,113. It's right. It's right. I will send it. So right. you cannot.
Thank you, Mr. Jonathan, and that's what I want to do.
My point is that while we empathize with what's happening in the region, the breakdown in terms of the rule of law, you find the militarization of the region and the entire West African region going back to the old days of the 80s, where coup d'etat and military takeover was the order of the day. While we empathize and create a safe havens for some of our West African brothers and sisters, that cannot account for the doubling of the population in Grand Prix.
That's not even the point. We don't care when it comes to number. We don't care what's happening in the region. We're just looking at the number. So you're not sitting here speculating off the top of our head about what should be and what should not be.
No, they have presented no justifiable answer for why the number has doubled.
Mr. Yempa, and that's why we're waiting for the details.
Not say you don't care, because we do care. That's what we have in this conversation.
Thank you. Let me go to Dr. Duke.
I don't empathize. I don't. Okay. When it comes to the number, I'm not using empathy in that sense. I use empathy in a different sense. In different ways, I'll use the word empathy. So I'm very careful and deliberate in how I use my words.
Thank you, Dr. Duke. And that's the problem, right? Because I struggle because there's not enough data that we've gotten. I keep asking Mr. Gonglo and Mr. Salif, what are some of the data points that we're supposed to see? Because all I see here is what I put on the screen, right? This one that says Grand Cru, 2008, they were 57,000. 2022, they are 109,000. The difference is 51,000. That's the increase. And that percentage point is 88%. That's all I get. And then I get to the other chart that says, okay, this is the population. Riverside is the lowest, Masurado the highest. That is all. I'm interested in the breakdown. Again, I want to see how many people are in Dotvaken.
Yes.
This will be. I called today. I kind of this. I start check around. Were you counted? Yes or no? If you were counted, what were some of the questions you were asked? I wanted to get an idea what information that they were seeking and how they will use that. So they were asking for your name, where you work, if you have TV, if you have stove, if you have a pressing iron, and all these things. I've never worked with Census before, so I've been scrambling for a day now trying to get information so we can use in this. But in the absence of that, it's very hard to do this. Dr. Duke, what
Yes,
are we? There's a lot of things about the numbers, but without any details. And there's a guy too who gave, and I played the tape at the beginning, who was giving the breakdown. What I was expecting was little more detail, but he repeated what everybody said. He did not tell me, even if he had said something like some of the reason why we have this shift in population, the increase or the decrease, or some little details about how many people in, say, Sasstown or Barclayville or Picnic or something, but I didn't hear that. So anything we do here with people are just jumping to a conclusion, a Grand Cru is small and you're going to use this to cheat in the election, and I think that is getting in the way of a proper analysis. What's your take?
Well, I think it's very simple. When you when you make a report, where you have to, people, you have to give numbers. It just takes one wrong number to put the whole process into doubt. I mean, we don't know how Grand Cru got to that point. Is it, how, if Malians went to migrate from Mali because of, they will go to Cote d'Ivoire, where they speak French. They'll go to Senegal. Burkina Faso, the same thing. If you had 20,000 Malian or Burkina Faso coming to Liberia, the UN, everybody will be talking about it. So I think we are just talking in the dark. We don't really know. We don't have the details. But the numbers they give us an indication of what happened. And you can also, believe this. Liberia the population has always been undercounted. From 1951, from 1952, I remember there was a census, and I mean, not I was there, but I read it. And that was like 2.8 million people at one point. There was a book that Liberia back in 1952, because they just put these numbers together to say, okay, this is what we have. And that was colonial Liberia. And I don't think the trend had changed. I don't think that vision of Liberia had changed. Where you count the cities, okay, we have this, we have estimation. We don't really have that. I don't think we have ever counted Liberia right. I don't think so. When you think about it, that 1952 Liberia was 2.8 million people. And then it came down at some point, and then when Tobo did his first census, it was 3.2 million people. And then it kept going, changing, but we don't know. There's a lot of politics in census. Even in the US, people use census to trick, to do political tricks. Why not in Liberia?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you just joining us,
point.
Yeah, one second. If you're just joining us, and this is Tough Talking Thursday, we are talking census. If you want to join the conversation, please call 605-313-6004. The code is 791403#. And before you come in, Thomas, Mr. Mansfield Dopu, who also should have been on this show tonight, but he has some issues, saying folks left Monrovia for some of those counties for jobs in the mining sector. And River G and Grand Cru that got the highest, I don't think folks, but you could be right, but there's no data to back that. Also, he said you will find that in the housing survey, not census. And so I want Thomas to speak to that, because what was conducted is housing and population survey. So, Mr. Dropo, when you say you're going to find that in housing survey, not census, please clarify. Mr. Buchanan.
Yes, I mean, the whole issue of census is data. And to me, like I said from the beginning, one of the ways we can double check this is to look at other data points. Because when the census was conducted in 2008, in 2016, when the household income and expenditure survey was done, Liberia population was using the birth rate and the growth rate of population and all of that. An updated set of numbers were provided for Liberia's population. And in the household income and expenditure survey of 2016, Grand Crew population was 70,000. So it actually left from, let's say, 57,000 in 2008 to 70,000 in 2016. So if people are bringing all of this argument that, oh, a lot of people have gone there from Ivory Coast, from other places, or a lot of mining is taking place, then that means that increase in population, which is close or over 100,000, that should be coming from between 2016 and now. But it cannot be before that, because we have a data point that we can use to verify that Grand Crew population was 70,000, River G was 81,000. So that's why I said when the full numbers come out, we really need to be able to look at all of these data points to see exactly what contributed to the increase. But I don't know exactly what the other person is talking about, that will be found in a housing survey. And again, the other issue about these counties is that people who go to mine, they are normally not in settlements like towns and villages. They are in the forest. So how come they went all over in the forest? To be able to track them is something that would be really interesting. But I think going back to the point that Dr. Duke made earlier, this whole issue about this census is the issue of confidence. Because we have seen videos that came out in River G, for instance, at the county service center, where they were trying to be able to add up the numbers to get close to what has been projected. And these videos are all on the internet. So I think for me, at this point in time, this whole issue about this census data is the issue of confidence. And I don't agree to the point that because we've not used census data in the past to make planning and make decisions, we can use it in the future. I think things are changing. Like I said, decentralization is taking place. We'll get to a point, no matter how long it takes, we'll get to a point where central government will be dividing revenue with subnational governments, and population data will be used for that. Also in 2011, we did use the census data. We didn't use it across the board, but the increment that came from Monserrato had, I think, 15 seats, legislative seats. It went to 17. I think Lofa had 3 or 4. They added 8 up. Nimba had a lower number than what they have now. So it means partially it was the census data that was used to allocate those additional seats in the populated counties. So I think things will change in the future. We might use it. We are going to use it, and this is going to be with us for the next 10 years. This is why it should have been done to the extent where every citizen will have confidence in this census result.
Dennis,
thank you.
Dennis,
when I was in
Dennis, it's important.
Hold on 1 second. You're coming. When I was in Dodokan 1984, when the census took place, people, what we thought census was for taxes. So people were literally running in the bushes so that they would not be counted. I saw my father because he came to our village and he had like 3 huts, and he was begging for them not to count the other house because that would increase his taxes. So what I'm saying, this is a census. It should be preceded by education. Other than that, people are not going to avail themselves to be counted. And if you go in the southeast, where the people are in the forest, the Sapo National Park, I don't think people are going in the forest. The Buchanan Bays that we are talking about, from what we hear from Nimba, from Maryland, Grand Judah, and so forth, they are not in the town. You can't easily see them to count them. So there are other issues that, and that's why I'm waiting for the details. According to the report, it's going to come back it's going to come in May. There we're going to see some of the analysis, and I'm looking forward to that. Mr. Gonglo, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to make a quick clarification here on the statement Thomas made, Mr. Cannon made. In 2011, the legislature did not use the population census for for constituency demarcation. They did not use that. What they did, they set that aside because it was a big debate in Liberia at the time. Blambo Nelson led that process. What they did, the smaller counties, largely counties from the southeast, Bombing County, I believe Kima, Bapulu, joined them. These were the smaller counties. They joined them. And they outnumbered the big counties and said, we'll not use the population census data. We set it aside. We just look at it and say, okay, most reality, you get this number. So what they did, they passed a resolution that said, no county can be reduced to single constituency. The Constitution says a threshold. A threshold must be specific and say, from this census result, representation will be by this number. 40,000 Liberians will have one representative. That was not a resolution. The resolution said they can add few seats to other counties, but no county should be reduced to a single constituency. Because if they are set a threshold to say maybe 30,000, some of the counties would have been reduced to a single constituency. So they rejected it. So that is not using the census data.
So then 1 second. The resolution and everything, like you said, that is how it went. And the person who led that advocacy for the census data to be set aside is Zanzan Kawa, because it took almost 2 years the legislature could not agree on a threshold, like you said. But what I'm saying is that even though the census data was set aside, how did we know that Monserrado was populated and therefore we needed to give him 1 or 2 additional seats? How did we know that Nima had more population? So even though it was set aside, but the populated counties were compensated politically for the lower counties who have lost their seats. So what I'm saying is the census gave us an idea of what the data is. I'm not disputing the fact that the resolution was not brought into play. But how did we know the population of the county to know which county were populated and which was not? It was the census that gave us an idea of that. So indirectly, it was that census data that was used to give seat to the populated counties. But the resolution, I agree with you. We didn't follow it. Chief Zanza Kawa said they should set it aside because it was running us into a constitutional crisis, and that was the way it went. There was a resolution that was signed. I agree with you.
I just want to make
hold on, Mr. Gonglo. I want to bring Mr. Salif in, and then we go into our Tabata session. Also, I just want to be clear that this is what Mr. Yonton sent to me, population by nationality. And you have Liberian, Guinean, Ghanaian, Nigerian, Sierra Leonean, Ivorian, Burkinabe, so on and so forth. Again, this cannot be independently verified by focus on Liberia because, as he said, it did not get it from, he said they have access to resources. I don't. And my reporters were there, our FOL reporters were there, but we couldn't get this. We didn't get this. So thank you, Mr. Yonton. Mr. Salif, I want you to conclude, and then after this, we're going to get few comments and then go into our Tabata session.
You should take some calls. I think people are anxious.
Yeah.
I just wanted to.
I'm watching the call log.
2 quick points, then you can, go to your calls or your comments. The point about Mr. Gonglo's point about we don't really do policy prescription based upon census results, which is a major problem. It's part of our governance in catastrophe, really. That's been disputed. I mean, I was looking at somebody said in a comment in the 70s, I think it was 1972 when the census happened, that President Turbo actually, some of the, later on his administration, some of the major decisions that he made were based upon that census results. And one thing about the international community, the UN in Liberia, they extrapolate, they go by, what they call the so-called growth rate. So they aggregate, right? When we were designing the HIES survey, that the report we got was, and for which we pushed lists was, it says since 1936, the UNDP, World Bank, have been, also 1936, but a very, a long time ago. I'm not missing my dates up, but there have been no HIES done in the country based upon which the say national account calculations happened, or say even some of our some of the macroeconomic decisions that are made, right? So these UN bodies, the point I'm making is they get it wrong too, because they extrapolate, and then they just go by what they call aggregate. For instance, the growth rates, they will say, okay, Liberia is about this size, can be more than Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone has this, it has similar characteristics as this country, and then they just go to do this policy transplantation kind of thing, and they extrapolate from there. They plan based upon that. Because they've done that several times, and they've gotten some of it right, they continue to extrapolate. And then we follow their numbers. The IMF says this, the World Bank says this, and that's what we follow. So that necessitated that HIES to really try to do household level income and expenditure survey to understand who are heads of household in Liberia, how many family, what is family sizes in the country, what are the economic conditions of these people and things like that, so that then you are able to plan, you do your resource allocation, but also get development assistance envelopes and things like that in terms of multilateral diplomacy. So if the UN said that Liberia, is way more than 5.5 or something like that, I take it with a grain of salt, because they've gotten it wrong many times. They always say Liberia is a data desert. We don't have data. We do have data, but we don't work with data. We don't know how to mine the data. We don't investigate, and we don't have accurate data as baseline data to be based research upon. A lot of donors, just like they talk about lack of capacity, so too they talk about lack of data in the country, and nothing is really reliably based on data decision making. So we have to be careful with, okay, this is what the UN said, this is what the international community is saying, therefore it must be accurate. That was the point I wanted to get in, and the fact that, I don't know for a fact, but others are saying in the past we've made decisions based upon some of the surveys that we've done, health demographic survey, HIES, and so forth.
At this time, we don't have a caller, so let's go into a few comments. Mr. Yonton, this one for you. He said, don't forget that Liberians who were refugees in the sub-region have returned home at a large scale. Perhaps this could be another reason why the southeastern population has increased. Sam Wallace said, every political party should be excited about the data and have people huddle around a table digging into the data to help inform their strategy. Instead, this guy is whining about cheating. Get to work. Yeah, we need the details. You can't just go dig because they say they got 20,000 people in Dudrican. I must see, how many of them are at the age of voting. So, and he also says, can anybody say a positive thing about the census? Mr. Sharif, any positive thing? I don't know. I don't think anybody has said any negative stuff.
Any positive things? Any positive thing about it?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's positive. The fact that finally, that they were able to do something, and that's really a low bar. I mean, the government has, reneged on its responsibility, on its constitutional responsibility, and the government was never held accountable by these opposition people that are complaining now, and they should have been. They should have called. And I agree with Gonglo here. His brother has been in the forefront of some of these vociferous opposition to government usurping authority, and so that is the problem that we have. So I don't know on both sides if we have any real positives. The government has done something that they should have done all along.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Gonglo. Shall I say I'm very disappointed in Mr. Gonglo's analysis on the issue of the distribution of the population by counties. If you can unmute, please.
I don't know what I said that person would disagree. I said I can understand the suspicion about the distribution by county, particularly Grand Cru and what have you. But on the overall, the population estimate, the figure that is given, it's actually a represent on the coverage. I think I made this point.
Dr. Duke. Mr. Duke said the conduct of the census is a national pride. Let's admit it.
Yeah, well, If you do it right, it's a pride. If you've done 2, 5, 6 years ago, it's a pride. Yeah, that if you do on time, you do it rightly, and then people understand it, and they don't have any doubt from the get-go. Yeah, it's a pride. I can be proud of something I don't understand.
Thank you. Let me get one caller here. That's Darling Warwood. Darling, you're live.
All right, thank you for having me. So, talking about this census that was just conducted, which of course we don't have all the information needed to make determination. So, like Mr. Bungalow and the other brother were debating about the census that was conducted in 2011, and those guys, the House on Capitol Hill, taking that data and setting it aside, making their own allocation based on some resolution. In the United States where we live, there are about 6 states with just one representative each. So if we say we are trying to model our governmental system and everything we do in Liberia after America, but when it comes to the rule of law, we set it aside and we become a lawless country. At what point do we start to really behave the normal people and follow the rule of law? So if you got censors that are supposed to determine, read, let's say, districting and all of that, and you take it and set it aside, and somebody say, let's do some resolution and compensate countries with a larger population, and these smaller countries cannot have, less than one representative. That is disingenuous. That just show a clear disregard for the rule of law. This United States. America has the 6 states with one representative each. And sometimes some states will give a representative, some will lose a representative, they will lose a seat. But in Liberia, it's the other way around. There is no rule of law. We don't respect the rule of law. I don't know at what point, that's why we are what we are as a people in the country. And this is frustrating. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Somebody said because of Chief Zanzan Kawa, I'm going to be doing something. Even though this is not about
Danny, let me make a quick point on that.
Anyway, that go English?
That go English there.
Hold on, let me bring it. Jimmy.
Yes, John, very good program. How are you doing?
Good.
I have 2 comments. One, I heard you guys talking about the various things that are wrong, and somebody commented about solutions. It starts and ends with accountability. Because if you hold people accountable, then whether they're competent or not, it will determine if you keep them. But because there's no accountability is where we're having all these problems. Now, the issue of the census. Today in this world, data is key. The census allows us to plan for cities. The census allows us to plan for schools. It's not just about politics, but it entails the planning medical facilities. Everything your country is about to embark on, the census is contingent upon plans that you want to formulate. So it's extremely important. The thing is, I'm not even sure we are beginning to use that kind of data to our advantage. If you want loans, if the World Bank, UNICEF, every one of those institutions will use your census data to determine what you should get. So it's extremely important. That's the only comment I want to make. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Look, Thomas, you wanted to make a point, and then we go to our Tabata session. Those are all the callers we have for the night.
Yes, I wanted to make a quick point on the first caller. I think what he expressed was the disappointment that many people felt back in 2011. And like he said, if we model our democracy after the US, then we always should follow those standards. And it goes back to the very state of when the US got their independence. There was a very serious issue as to how representation should be decided in their Congress. And that's where the whole issue of the bicameral Congress came from. What were they going to do with states that were less populated as opposed to states that were more populated? And that's where this whole issue of the Senate came from. That in the Senate, whether you were populated or not, you were going to get 2 senators, so that it could serve as a balance against your underrepresentation in the House of Representatives. But in 2011, we didn't follow that formula. We said, oh, we didn't want bombing, we didn't want a brain crew, and sign up to have only one lawmakers. Let's keep what they have and then just compensate the others. We were outside the requirement of the Constitution. And 2011 was the first opportunity we had to set a constituency based on census data, and we missed that opportunity. So I think this is something, I mean, once that precedent is set, we always keep doing it. But if we say we are a democracy, then we have to follow these tenets of democracy, not to always create our own democracy.
So you understand why people will say, "Oh, this thing was not done Ellen time. Why you want we have to do it?" You understand that now, right?
We are going to change things. Why is
Yeah.
it all bad thing?
At this time,
We're still hoping for change.
at this time, we're going to go to our Tabata session. Every week, there's Tabata going on in the country. Tabata in southeastern, and when I say southeastern, I mean Grand Cru, River G, all the places that get higher population. Somebody told me I was preparing for the show. He said, every day, vote reach, Nimba, vote reach, bomb. We tired with it. We're going to get population.
You multiply some multiplication, right?
So now we can have at least two counties in the southeast will cross out one big county in the north. All right, let's go around the table for our Tabata of the week. Mr. Yonton, you are new to Tabata. What's your Tabata of the week?
Well, the video I mentioned that took place in River G, and thanks for the correction there. I think it is, yeah, it's really troubling. It's really troubling. You could see the young man, for whatever reason, he's been apprehended, he's been chastised, but you could see him begging for mercy. It leaves me with a question: where is compassion in our society today?
Or justice?
Yeah, why are we taking the law into our hands? Um, why are we still treating each other as though we're in some warlike time, and everyone is suspicious of each other? You know, I think part of the bigger conversation here is our failure since the civil conflict to deal with the issues of the legacy of the Civil War, to deal with the issue of how you call it,
Impunity.
justice, to deal with the issue of impunity. All right, we sectionalize, we move our nation fast into tribes and regional politics. That each region has to protect their own heroes, and this is the unraveling effect of what the failure of a nation to deal with its excesses as far as the post-conflict scenario is concerned, and that's what we're witnessing every day in our eyes.
Thank you. Mr. Gonglo, your Tabata of the week.
I'm not too sure if I have Tabata, but I will say this. The thing that I've observed that doesn't make sense to me
Then that's Tabata.
is the fact that in the legislature we have majority opposition lawmakers, but on paper, but in reality, we have a functional majority sedition. So every time opposition parties that have elected officials in the legislature, they are always claiming to have representation. I don't know when would they come to the realization to disown those people, that these people are functional sedition.
Thank you. Or they just voting across the aisle.
Well, you can do both.
Mr. Sharif, what's your Tabata of the week?
Yeah, and these are the very people that voted to impeach Kabine Jana, and they call themselves opposition. It's just yeah. So what do you expect? I don't know. I was thinking about Jefferson Koji's appointment as the Secretary General of the CDC. I mean, you serious? Are you serious? All right, You know, so but it's these guys are presented a report, right? So I think let's just you know, when they were presenting this provisional census report, um at first when I listened to, you know, I watched them, it was like at first it was like a religious festival, you know, where this guy came in, you know, is preaching and all these different things, like from the invocation. So if you're going to have a Christian give the invocation, you know, this is 2023 Liberia. Can you have a Muslim also, like they do in Sierra Leone and some of these other countries? So, I mean, and this whole thing about having a group of people in the room, what is that about? Just get a press conference, release your provisional report, and
Right.
get done with this. It's
Uh,
unnecessary for all the members of the diplomatic corps, Mr. This and that. Nonsense. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Thank you. You took my Tabata. Because imagine, I mean, the ministers are there. I see sport minister, finance minister. I see members of the diplomatic corps, the vice president, finance
Right.
minister. I mean, think about the cost of that and think about the opportunity cost.
And then the vice president don't have work to do. She's not doing anything.
It reminds me of when we're on the Burundi refugee camp, when those 9-year-old children having a tournament, the place is packed. And if that tournament is over, the town, I mean, we have nothing else to do.
Everybody drinking, yeah.
Dr. Duke, what's your Tabata of the week?
Well, my Tabata of the week goes back to the budget. That $2 million goes to the fire service, and $1.7 million goes to salaries. Do you know the fire service in Morovia? How many people they will spend $1.7 million in salary in 1 year? And the 300,000, where do that go? Where does that go? Water, to buy water to put in the truck? That's, you know, it's funny, right? $2 million for Morovia fire service. If they say, okay, we're going to buy 5 trucks and put water points around the city.
Right.
Because Morovia is the only place where, you know, houses get burned, except they burn your house in Ganta or somewhere else. But $2 million for the fire service in Morovia, not, you know. Yeah, 1.7 million for salaries. I mean, that's so many people on Ashburn Street every day. You see them sitting there, 3 or 4 guys, no more than that.
Right.
And the truck never has water. And they can't even move from that place because anyway, that was my Tabata.
Thank you.
And
Mr.
of course,
Kane.
Mrs. Scott, our prayer with her.
Mr. Kane, what's your Tabata of the week?
Dennis, I don't think this is based on the definition of Tabata. Let me not take it to be Tabata, but you know, when they had the official presentation of the census, the preliminary census result, the vice president was very excited. I think when the president left the country, she presided over the census and she was excited that the result has come out. And she made a statement when she was speaking. And she said the percentage of men, I think, is 50.4%. And for women is, I think, 49.some%. And she said, why you guys could not just do it so it could be 50-50? You know, so that we can be side by side. It was fun, but I mean, when you look deep into it, is that the issue of this was just made up? Was it possible that could be done for somebody who presided over the census? That was funny, but to me, it carries a lot of weight, and everyone just laughed about it. But considering the background of this census, that numbers were being cooked, they were being added up. For the person who presided over it to have said, you guys will have just completed this process. I think that was really interesting to me.
That's excellent. That's an excellent point.
Mr. Salif.
Well, it had to be mine, you know, came out of this, the tragedy of the former Chief Justice's house, where the legislature ran into panic mode and they only thought about themselves. They said, let's pass a bill to allow private security guards our residences, particularly a senator from my Matana County, my grandmother's county, Grand Kidma County, Barney Sherman. He said, "Me, if anyone comes unauthorized on my compound, I'm going to shoot them. I'm going to kill them." Basically, so they all panicked, right? And who did they think about? Themselves. This is what we have, right? That the people who have power only think about themselves and themselves only. To me, it was a complete nonsense. It's like,
Yeah.
where,
And
what about,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly that's what has been happening, right? People have been taking the law in their own hands. So anybody come, you shoot.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
Tabata is from that ceremony. During the ceremony, Samuel Tue, you know, Samuel Tue, finance minister, and I felt very sad that the people are playing with something. I work with a call on the History Channel, and almost like 60% of the data we talk about will come from census data. If you want to know if Elijah Johnson, for instance, was in the country, you go to the census. It tells you, okay, this person is there. Even the slaves or the ex-slaves, census data is very crucial, and that's where you get. So if you went to Dodoka 1984, they will tell you, Wilson Jar children. You see my name, you see my age, right? If you have good census data, so it's not something to play with. And this man, they were talking. In fact, there's something they call digital census, and Calabo was trying to explain it to me. I still didn't get it, and I'm a very smart guy, right? So digital census, somebody said they're saying digital census because they use the tablet from Ghana to get the information. But whatever that is, Samuel Tue was saying, and all of them were saying, this is the first ever digital census in the country, and President Weah, in fact, he went further to say he's the first in everything. He's first in many things. So there will come a time we start calling the first president. And believe it or not, President Weah will soon take that title, because that's how he did with the feminists in chief, and things start going on. Another one was, I think the guy who presented the data said, thank President Weah for his unprecedented support to the census. The support he gave the census has never been done in the history of Liberia. And this guy are joking with us. What is unprecedented about doing what you're supposed to do that the Constitution says you should do? To me, those two were my Tabata. And let me look for, there are other Tabatas that our viewers are saying. For Sam Wallow, my Tabata of this week is on the panel jumping through hoops tonight to discredit a census process they said was not going to take place, and have predicted a constitutional crisis will ensue at election time. I think that was the voter count, the voter registration. They were talking about constitutional crisis. Darling Warwood, my Tabata is Little New Grand Crew County is the new voter-rich county, surpassing Nimba County. PYJ fall down inside. It's not. It's still didn't surpass Nimba, but some numbers are there. Mansfield Duopo Matabata is the current DNA scandal involving a political personality in Monrovia and the massive population explosion in the current census. I'm hoping we'll have an avalanche of DNA scandal in Liberia. We still have more and more Tabata. If you have your Tabata, keep it coming. I think that's all the Tabata I have now. But Keller Vincent is agreeing with your Tabata. I say, you just made my night about the fire truck. All right. Thank you. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., you're going to have the literary hour. On the literary hour, we'll have a young Liberian, Dr. Dashlyn Cox, who has written a book, From Refugee to Doctor, and she will be interviewed on the literary hour tomorrow at 6 p.m. with Professor K. Moses Nambwe and Jackie Sayer. So you don't want to miss the literary hour. Then on Saturday at 7, they're going to be the History Channel, and the president we're going to be talking about is President Howard. According to our presenter, called Famula, President Howard was the first indigenous president, a Bassa man, pure Bassa. He spoke 3 languages. Don't miss it. You're going to hear more. Every Tuesday, we have Abby Tyler's Healthy Living. Tomorrow also at 6, at 8, we're going to have Debate Friday. And we're going to be debating on some trending current issues. You also don't want to miss that. Saturday at 3 p.m., we're going to have the Business and Economic Forum that's called FOL Marketplace. We're going to be discussing, guess what? The budget. What's in the budget? And the budget hearing. When you go for budget hearing, what are you supposed to hear? What is this supposed to do? And what did we get out of this current budget hearing? I learned that the House have already passed the budget. So don't miss it. Well, guys, we'll have the current chairman of LPP, Yangwa Zeze. He wrote a very lengthy article on the budget hearing. You're going to have Emmanuel Jackson, our admin Sharif, and Gabriel Carter. I'll be there too to ask them some questions and break it down. Next week, Anthony Sia will be here on the Hour of Politics with the LPP's option to elect Councillor Gonglo as president. Don't miss it. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for the night. At this time, we're going to go around the room. Guess what? We're supposed to talk about the U.S.-Liberia relations, but these two topics covered. We're going to put that to another time. It was good discussing the census and also the tragedy at the former Chief Justice residence. Mr. Cannon, this is your first time. And by the way, sorry I didn't give you our bottle of water. I'm going to give you the ceremonial cola. I say welcome. So let's get your closing comments, sir.
Thank you very much, Dennis. And I didn't say this from the beginning, but let me just say in my closing, my views here tonight represent me as a citizen of Liberia. They don't represent the views of any of the employers that I have worked with in Liberia before coming over here. I just wanted to put that out as part of my closing statement. I want to say thanks to the platform for granting me the opportunity to appear tonight, to share the platform with all of these experienced and knowledgeable people, to share my perspectives. In terms of the issues that we discuss, as we close, I think we just continue to pray for our former Chief Justice. Like I said, she is very traumatized. We hope that family members can come around to be able to console her and to also express our sympathy to her and the entire family for the loss of the little girl that got murdered as part of the incidents. And also to pray for the other girl who is hospitalized so that God can bless her for her to be able to recover. In terms of the census, like we've all said, we will wait for the details to come because like we always say the devil is in the details so that we can really be able to drill down these numbers and see exactly where these population growths are coming from. It's not only that counties in the Southeast are growing, but counties that have had population in the past, and we expect that they were going to grow, they did not grow up to the expectation. So these are all things that we need to investigate to be able to see. There were some concerns about why should we celebrate about this. It has been concluded. I'm still waiting to see what the lawmakers are going to say because some of them have been saying that they are allotted for the census, it went outside the constitutional time and all of that. So a lot of discussion is going to come. But I think one of the other things that came from there is this collaboration because when just went into crisis, I think the whole government had to marshal their statistical capacity. And the person who even presented those preliminary results, I think it's from the health ministry. So they managed to use the capacity that they have across different institutions to be able to get this through. But whether it went through legally, whether it will stand up to legal scrutiny, whether it will stand up to the trust of the Liberian people, it's still something that we are waiting to see as the details come out and we see the public discussion of it. But thank you, and I look forward to coming back so that we can discuss Liberia as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. And Paul want to tell you that the entire Canis family is listening to you, Thomas. And let me give you one more Tabata here. This one comes from Abby Tyler. Say, my Tabata is Liberian men running, celebrating, yelling. You are not the father, like those immature men on Morris show. And tomorrow camp, we're going to talk about, we call it the Mo Ali situation on Friday night debate. You know, there are three sides to every story. The the true side, the false side, and the other side. Mr. Yonton, you're closing, sir.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful night. I enjoyed the exchanges. I want to say thanks to all of the panelists and even our many contributors and common citizens across watching the show. Again, we are in active election year. Um, is is a time for all parties, including the one I support, to increase the level of visibility and engagement with the people to connect at a personal and grassroots level. Um, we cannot afford 6 more years of what we've seen over the last 5 years. And also, the much talk about conversation on opposition unity, I think every time we have the opportunity to speak to our people, is something that we have to resound. Like the only time we we get the backlash of the Liberian people is when we don't listen. They are calling on us to do the right thing, just as we did with the coming together of the CPP. Hopefully, that we can begin, breaking barriers and having conversation that needs to be held in the best interest of our people, so that we can end the 6 years of nightmare that we've had over the last time. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Duke, on mute. And by the way, Mr. Minsfield Dwopo said, great show, guys. FOL is the best. Good night. Looking forward to seeing you all next week.
I think
Dr.
I'll just
Duke.
say thanks to all the luminaries who enlightened me about these statistical things. Sirleaf, Thomas, Gonglo, and Sheriff, with his opinions and all of that, and of course, Nyonton. And I really don't have much to add to this. I think it was a great show. I hope people keep digging. We have a problem, when you have elections coming up, anything that happens matters a lot, especially when you're dealing with the issue of, allocating positions. So I think we need to look into these things. People who know statistics, people who know about census, people who know budgets, who know anything about budgeting, government budget, go look at it. It's not just for the opposition or for the people, it's also for the government. Uh, Believability, you have to be believable. And don't let people think that every time you do something, you're trying to you're tricking them, or that you're lying. And this government has been used to doing that, and that's a problem. Professionalism counts a lot. Leadership matters, and we hope that things that happen to Mususkat, although somebody sent me, call me and say, what happened to Musu? It may be very political. I said, why? He said, when Taylor sent these people in jail 20 years ago, something, they were sentenced to 10 or 15 years, by Bala and other groups. They went for appeal, and Musu doubled their sentences. Musu got doubled their sentences. I said, no, I'm not sure. I'm sure. He said, no, don't discount it. Some people keep these things in heart. They don't forget. But anyway, something that, sad to remember, but, I hope she's okay. I hope everybody's okay in the family, and we pray for them.
Thank you. Mr. Gonglo.
Wow.
Well, it's been a good night. I hope we can keep the show short. But my parting comment, I just want to speak quickly to some of the issues we discussed, and on a quick note, to actually warn the opposition. Historically, we always fought to change government, and that's the sad part in Liberia. We have not tried to change government based on the issues. When we were tired with the TWP, we fought. When Doe came, Doe and his other guys, they were not the right people who jubilated in the street for them. And we soon got tired with Doe. We said we wanted him out. And we had Taylor and his gangs. Then now we are quickly tired with what we are for a good reason. We are is a catastrophe. But again, we should not just rush into the mindset that a cat is better than we are. Or like I've heard some people in the opposition say, I would prefer even a cat to be president of Liberia to President we are. And I disagree with that concept. We should have the right person. We cannot keep changing and having the bad leaders all of the time. We should look at the track leaders of those who want to lead us to see who has what it takes. On this panel, we agreed a few months ago that corruption was number one issue in Liberia. We should look for the person who has the energy, the strategy, and the outline to fight corruption. That is the issue. Otherwise, we're going to be back here after 6 years in 2029 and say, no, 2029 is too long to wait. Let's change the guy. So that would be my advice to the opposition. And lastly, I'll quickly say that statistics is a very contentious issue to discuss in Liberia, so I'm always unwilling to do it. There are a lot more I wanted to say tonight, but I don't want to say it because I don't want to be crucified by people who believe the other way, contrarily, maybe in the opposition or in the government. I don't want to be crucified, but there are a lot more things I wanted to say that people, I believe, those who have the mindset already about the census will just trash me out. So I keep my professional view and just sit with it.
We hope you can express those views because it's very critical that you give those views because Liberia right now we are not in a not so good place. Mr. Salif, your closing comments, sir.
Thank you, everyone. It's always an honor to be in the same space with you all. I want to say national security is security for all, and security for all is security for self. Everything hinges on security. What is the perception of a secure country, physical security, security to rule of law, security, food security, health security. At the end of the day, if you have a country where people believe they can be saved, their money can be saved, and no armed robbers or no assassins will come after them at night, they can travel freely. You attract investment. You attract your sons and daughters from all over the world to invest to come home. You attract even domestic investment. So what happened to the former Chief Justice, as sad as it is, it's not the first time. It's just that it's happened to a prominent citizen. It's happened to so many other prominent citizens and so many not so prominent citizens, but still citizens of our country. Liberia is a beautiful country. It's, if we can really work to fix it, we in Africa, people admire us. We need to go back and to some of that. In terms of the census, we've all said it, right? Censuses are crucial bedrock tools for everything you do, for development, for service to people, understanding your people, understanding your country, understanding the needs, where things are shifting, where the population is moving, and birth rate. You want to control the birth rate, you want to encourage the birth rate, everything within that happened in the previous 10 years will give you a good sense after you've conducted a very thorough census. No census is 100% accurate. No statistical endeavor is 100% accurate. In fact, some other surveys, they take samples, right? So it's just depending on the type of research. But census is not an aggregated type of statistical exercise, a count by count. So initially, there was big chaos, and the government struggled to kick it off the ground. We criticized them, we pushed them to do it, and then we stopped hearing anything. Now something has come out. I just want to, these are provisional results. So that's why I was very reluctant to go into any details about it. We're waiting to see what the actual details and what the numbers are telling us, so we can do some regression around them to understand. But we want to give it to them. If they put it up, we just want to encourage that these are real, legit data. These are not any made up anything. Census, you can go back and do verification. You go recount of some portions, some spots, and things like that. So things can be fixed. We're hoping that what we get is really the real deal that's happening in the country. So thank you for the opportunity to discuss this, because it's really important.
Thank you. I heard, saw a comment, someone asking for the budget. The link is posted there on the show. Please check on that. That's of the Ministry of Finance website. Mr. Sharif, you got your last word.
Yeah, so Dennis, once again, it was a great show, a great time with, if I may borrow Dr. Duclay's word there, luminaries. And so I think that, when we gather to talk about these issues, we do it against the background of, love for country, real patriots come around here and talk about these different national issues. And so first, shout out to my brother there, Lusuni Sakwa. I think he always follows his show. So shout out to him. And I thank him for being loyal. So the discrepancy in from what we're discussing, these discrepancies, these, in the national numbers and stuff like that, these things happen. And so it's a legitimate concern. Those who have this concern, I do have this concerns, although I'm approaching this from a different angle. It's legitimate. I mean, you had a situation in Guinea not too long ago when the deposed president was running for a third term in his hometown. The number, from what I heard, from what I gather, from people that I know in that area, my sister actually lived there, was a teacher there for a long time. So the numbers there were cooked, from his home region, and even in the opposition stronghold in Conakry, some of the numbers from his strongholds, from what we heard, was also manipulated. So these things do happen. So people just have to be vigilant when they do happen, right? But I'm coming at it from a different angle. That being said, the other thing I want to piggyback on is what Ahmed mentioned about the senators. The senators arming themselves. So this is something that needs to be discussed more. See, Liberians need to be outraged about this kind of disposition of the senators. So years ago, the so-called natives, rebelled and threw out their former masters. So now, this is supposed to be our country. It's supposed to be now the natives are taking back their country. So is this how you're going to run? Is this how you're going to run your country? You're killing your own people. You're killing your people in this manner. Let's just say, Vonnie Sherman or, Edwin Snow, or some of these other guys who were affiliated with these warring factions who've never been prosecuted. They have the proclivity to go for the gun, right? So let's just say a passerby, someone have been passing by, and he just ordered to shoot this person. So then what? What is going to happen? So if you have all these people armed, then what's going to happen now? So they're concerned about themselves. So what I'm saying here is that you have a whole bunch of people in the legislature, in the government, who are the so-called natives, who are suppressing their own people. It's a shame, and they should be ashamed of themselves, and it's unfortunate. The sad reality about Liberia is that these so-called natives, by the way, where are these activists now? Where are these people who were agitating for the change in the 70s and 60s and so on and so forth? Where are they? Where are they? So if they're going to sleep now, is everything over? Is it because you have your natives now in the legislature and so on and so forth? At the executive mansion, is it over? That is the injustice and the travesty that Liberia is, and the sad reality is that Liberia is right now, to me, under the leadership of George Weah, and not just George Weah, and all these people in the legislature and the judiciary. It's a really, really sad thing to see. I don't see any hope right now.
Thank you. On that note, we say whether you are for opposition or pro-government, whether you think the census is from God or is not so good, we are all Liberians. And that's key. Let's do our very best to make our country the glorious land of liberty. That's why every night we never end a broadcast without playing the song that says, "We are all Liberians." Have a good night and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our